Welcome to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine we put together here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy so that you have a good grasp of what's going on. You can find out more about us at tertiumquids.org, or you can follow us on our YouTube channel and get podcasts of all previous episodes of Freedom and Prosperity Radio there. Just search Freedom and Prosperity Radio on YouTube or go from the link at tertiumquids.org. Our first guest this week, right in the middle of it all, July 9th, the special session begins at the Virginia Capitol with the General Assembly after 4 or 5 days of trying to come up with a hashtag that focus grouped well. No more thoughts and prayers, and it says something about a political group that doesn't want you thinking or praying. But that being said, it's all about guns, and when that's the case, we go to the Virginia Citizens Defense League, and Phil Van Cleave is the president there. Philip, thank you for joining us this week on Freedom and Prosperity Radio. How are you, sir?
I'm good, sir. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for all of the things you've done. I mean, you've had everyone coming after you from the left-wing commentariat on down, and you guys continue to grow in. So before July 9th comes, we have some local referendums as well. Virginia Beach, Albemarle County. I know you spoke at the Albemarle County meeting on Wednesday trying to make sure that these local governments don't send, I guess, resolutions of intent up to the governor or into Richmond with their representatives. In a Dillon Rule state, obviously the local governments can't do their own gun grabs, but talk about what local governments are trying to do with their representation, Philip.
Well, Virginia Beach is trying to make it so they can ban guns in their government buildings, but that's what got 12 people killed. Is the fact that was one of their gun-free zones, and they want to be able to expand that, I guess. And so you talk about not getting the lesson right from what happened. And the other things that are being pushed by the governor that these resolutions are backing, it's everything from one handgun a month again to bans on quote unquote assault rifles and those magazines that hold more than 10 rounds, and red flag laws, which are extremely dangerous because people don't understand all the parts of the Constitution that are shredded by a red flag law. And universal background checks. None of that stuff matters. All these people who have been doing the public mass killings, they've all passed these background checks. So putting more background checks is going to stop it? No, it's irrelevant to the whole thing.
Well, that's
people like you and me this all the time.
Well, and that's something that was brought up, and I try not to give the names of these shooters out because I think sometimes that engenders them to go for that big publicity moment, blaze of glory kind of thing. But this shooter in Virginia Beach would have passed everything, even if we went to the strictest possible interpretations and one gun a month, et cetera, et cetera. He would never have triggered any of that.
Right. In fact, the irony is the governor calls a special session, an emergency session, because he considers this something urgent. We've got to act right this minute to change our gun law so this doesn't happen again. And then every single proposal put out there has nothing to do with what just happened. So it wouldn't have changed anything at all, any of this. So the whole emergency session is nothing but a farce.
So what is it, all a political theater? I don't want to be particularly craven, but it is my role in life. It seems sometimes, Philip, to see the forest for the trees. Is this all trying to make campaign platforms for the Bloombergites that are going to be running for the House and Senate seats in November?
Yeah, it is. It's paying back Bloomberg. Bloomberg gave the governor $1.5 billion campaign donations and a bunch of other money to other Democrats. And this is all payback for Democrats getting a bunch of money from Uncle Bloomberg there in New York. And and so they're pushing this. Also, it's a way for the governor who's been hiding for the last 5 months, and the attorney general who's been hiding for the last 5 months, and the
lieutenant governor,
the governor, lieutenant governor, all of them have been hiding because of their various, everything from blackface scandals to being accused of sexual improprieties. So this was their way of jumping out and saying, oh, good, we got some other shiny object we can point everybody at, pretend like we're doing. and we can turn the page finally and move on. So for them, this tragedy was nothing but a good way to get out of some of their the heat they've been taking.
Well, am I the only one who catches the irony that all of a sudden the governor, who will talk about having a baby on a gurney and discussing whether the mother wants that baby to survive, now wants to do things that will help that baby once it makes it past the governor to survive a place that's a gun-free zone? Am I the only one who gets that irony?
Yeah, no, it's no, not at all. Life is valuable unless it's a baby laying on a table. Then that's okay to kill that. But other life, we've got to restrict everything. And he's just floating in whatever direction he seems to be the best for him politically, and none of it's making any sense.
The last time you were on with us, we were talking about the Charlottesville police chief who had come out vehemently against gun regulation and was trying to explain that it was a myth that good guys with a gun stop bad guys with a gun, because she cited statistics where police officers have died in the line of duty confronting an armed shooter. But that's not what the expression means. She's parsing it to her own ends. The expression a good guy with a gun means like in the Bataclan in France, where somebody says, hey, somebody needs to stop this shooter now before it gets even worse, before the police could even get there. So I think we're parsing, we're picking words specifically that suit our needs, and I think getting the language back is one of the hardest fights folks like you and me have, Philip.
Yeah, they don't have logic and reason on their side. They play words play with the words to make you picture something other than what they really are talking about. Like with assault rifles, they wanted people confused, thinking they were talking about machine guns when they did the assault rifle in '94. They cleverly, the gun controllers can cleverly package up something that's a bunch of junk, put it in a shiny package. It makes it look really cool and it makes sense, but it's nothing but junk. They're good at packaging. They're not so good at anything else.
So
that's what they're doing here. They're taking words and trying to make a package out of it that's something other than what it should be.
So, Philip, talk to the people, talk to the families, because I know that there's a reality. There are 12 families that are tormented and have had a horrific last couple of weeks since the shooting in Virginia Beach. Just like I was just reading that in that Denver suburb, they're talking about tearing down Columbine High School because they can't get past it. We just saw the young lady go up there with her attempt, I guess, reenacting, become so fascinated with the crime. These kind of things. Talk to point out what the message of the Virginia Citizens Defense League is to help you move forward so that there aren't another dozen families somewhere down the line, because we've seen statistics like the ones when Virginia passed their concealed carry in restaurants bill, violence in those restaurants went down. I mean, are those the things we need to be telling people when they're scared of gun violence, Philip?
The point is, we should never be telling a law-abiding, honest citizen that they shouldn't be able to protect themselves at any point. Our lives are all valuable, and as long as people can protect themselves, take away the tools from them, these mass killers won't be able to pull off their trade. They won't be able to do the mass killing because there'll be bullets flying back at them, and that changes everything. So, I mean, it's a simple solution that would have fixed Virginia Beach's problem, and would have fixed Virginia Tech if people with permits were allowed to carry, and there were no more gun-free zones. It's the gun-free zone that's it's a unicorn. It's a fantasy. It doesn't exist. It's an artificial thing, and unfortunately, it's an artificial thing where the good people are helpless, and the bad people ignore it, walk in and kill everybody. And then we call for more gun-free zones. It's like, an exit ramp to an expressway where people tend to crash as they go flying off that ramp. So they say, well, the way we get rid of the crashes is we raise the speed limit on the ramp. That's kind of what they're doing with gun-free zones. We need more of them, but they're killing people. Yeah, we need more. We just don't have enough.
Well, Philip.
Absolutely nuts.
Phil Van Cleave is on with us from the Virginia Citizens Defense League on this week's Freedom and Prosperity Radio. Philip, talk about that a second, because I found it interesting. A very quiet little press release came from the governor's office in the midst of him calling for his special session with this focus group, and I found it very interesting. Chuck Schumer, Tim Kaine, and then Mark Warner all used the same phrase. We don't want your thoughts and prayers. No more thoughts and prayers is the hashtag that goes along with this. But after that, he released millions of dollars for school resource officers so that schools across the county, including Albemarle County and Charlottesville, can hire more school resource officers to be trained, guards, good guys with the guns. Is there trying to a little bit of I don't want to say two-facedness, because I think there's way more than two faces going on in most politicians. So I call it multifacetedness, or at least trying to have his cake and eat it too at the same time.
Octofaces, maybe.
Yeah. So talk about this bill that's going to give all this money to school resource officers. Doesn't this admit then that the gun-free zone makes children less safe?
Yes, they're inadvertently making the point, again, the good guys with the guns stop bad guys with guns. That's what they're saying. But they are falling back to the old position. Well, as long as it's a government blessed person, government agent, then we're okay with it. But, the regular public, the Second Amendment, oh, God, no, we can't have normal people protecting themselves. You've got to be blessed by the government first. That's kind of their fallback. But I would say that in some states they try to. In fact, in Texas for a while they disarmed some of the police when they weren't on duty. So, they're after all guns, but every now and then they have to make some kind of a concession. That's as far as I guess they could stretch it. Resource officers.
Well, and I've said in the past, I want teachers teaching. I don't want them to be feeling like they have to be security guards. But one of the points that I think is left out is that somebody who doesn't own or has never used a firearm, is never trained in it, doesn't understand the training that somebody who does have, especially a concealed carry permit in Virginia, goes through with, time in the range, security training, being aware, the hyper awareness of what you are carrying changes the paradigm. So even a teacher that is a concealed carry permit holder doesn't have to be constantly watching the door to be prepared and trained up enough to do something if something bad goes sideways, right?
Right. Well, yeah. The whole concept is a teacher doesn't have to be walking around like a security guard. The teacher simply puts on the gun and goes about her business. She goes about her life like everything. And, if something bad happens, that's when suddenly the fact that she's armed becomes an issue. But she doesn't have to be thinking about it. In fact, I would not envision teachers running around trying to chase down a mass shooter. I envision them walking down their classroom and taking care of their students with their gun trained on that door. That's as simple as it gets. It doesn't take a whole lot of training to simply get all the students to the back of the room and lock down on the door, and bad guy steps in, you shoot him. That's pretty straightforward stuff. We don't expect the teachers to be a SWAT team. They're not all going to get together and go down the hall and search rooms. No, lock down your room, you're done. Wait for the police to get there, but that guy's not coming in that room to kill your kids. It's not going to happen. That's what an armed teacher situation would look like.
You mentioned the red flag laws at the start of our interview, Philip, and I want to go there because I get the hyperbole. I get the warm feeling of, if we could just keep the guns out of the hands of bad people. And I hear this from guys like Tim Kaine all the time. It's identifying who these bad people are. I'm sure King George probably would have said the same thing in 1775, right before Lexington and Concord. If I could just get the guns out of the hands of the bad guys. But who gets to decide that? And these red flag laws are concerning because you mentioned it's not just the Second, it's the First, it's the Fourth, it's the Fifth Amendments that are all being ripped from people because somewhere down the line somebody has put a mark on in a folder somewhere because either you sought out help from a school therapist or maybe your parents had you talk to a guidance counselor, and that becomes a mark that all of a sudden is the premise used to keep you from having not just Second but First, Fourth, even Fifth Amendment rights. Is that am I overstating the danger in these red flag laws?
Well, you forgot the Sixth Amendment as well. Yes. No, the whole thing is, without you having committed a crime, you've done nothing wrong based on the word of somebody that they think you are dangerous to yourself or others. They're going to come take your guns. And the proof that this is all about confiscation is they don't do anything for you, the supposed dangerous person. They don't take you to get you mental help. They don't even evaluate you to see if you need mental help. They simply walk out with your guns. As if arresting your guns is going to make you safe now. Now you can't commit suicide. Forget the 25% of suicides are by hanging. You now can't harm your family because you don't have guns. Well, plenty of people have been stabbed to death, including entire families. It goes on and on. They're not doing anything about the danger. They're merely using it as an excuse to take your guns away. And you don't get to confront your accuser. You don't get to go to court to prove that this was baloney until weeks and weeks after they've totally disarmed you. It's a great way to murder somebody you don't like. You simply say, oh, this person, we need a red flag against him. They take his guns, and you go over and murder him because you know he's helpless now. It's the whole thing is a farce. And until they actually help this dangerous person, it proves that it's a farce. They're not doing anything about the person. They're merely taking away his guns. It's totally stupid, but people fall for it, and this is why we consider it to be a real threat. Because people don't understand the everything that's wrong with those kind of laws. And again, I told you earlier, the left, or I shouldn't say the left, the anti-gun people are good at packaging. They package it very simply without telling you what's in the package. They say, shouldn't we get guns out of the hands of people that are intent on doing harm? They don't go into the details. That, but we have to throw away the Fourth Amendment, we have to throw away the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment. It's all based on somebody's word. They don't tell you that.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
They want to educate people.
Well, and you do a great job, and I should remind people it's vcdl.org. Philip Van Cleave is on with us this week on Freedom and Prosperity Radio. Philip, go further into that. I mean, we talk about the shooter at Virginia Tech or the shooter at Smith Mountain Lake. Both of them had demonstrated dangerous attributes. In the case of the news anchor who shot up his coworkers at Smith Mountain Lake, he had lost 2 jobs because of anger issues, yet we weren't allowed to help him find help. So it's not just the tragedy of the people he shot, but the tragedy of his own life had gone off the rail, of a young man who couldn't deal with whatever demons he was having. Sung-Wee Cho, again, Virginia Tech, there I am breaking my own rule, but he had been in therapy and nobody was allowed to find out about it. So is there a sweet spot in between the two that we could work in?
Well, you somehow have to get due process in this thing up front so that a person has a right to appear in court with an attorney and a state-funded attorney, which these bills never sponsor that. If you're poor, forget it. You get to go in front of the judge with no representation and try to explain how you're not dangerous. How do you prove to somebody you're not dangerous? I'd love to hear how that's done, especially if you don't even have an attorney there with you.
True.
But the sweet spot would be somehow you need to get due process up front so that you have a chance with an attorney or a court-appointed attorney, if you can't afford one, to be in front of a judge to explain your side. Why you're fine. It's this crazy ex-wife of yours that's trying to get even with you because she wants custody of the children or whatever. And if you can't prove it and you've got nothing that, looks like you really got everything as long as you're saying, well, then maybe then that would be okay. But none of these provide really for you to have an upfront due process. It's always after the fact. Your due process comes in after they've already taken your gun, and you don't know they're showing up. And usually they're coming in almost like a SWAT raid. Doorbell rings at 5 a.m. You have no idea who's ringing your doorbell. You go to the door carrying a gun because you don't know who this is or what the danger might be. And this happened in Maryland, and the gun owner got shot to death. Police saw the guy had a gun and killed him. As if the guy was supposed to know they were coming, when it was almost a no-knock raid. It wasn't no-knock, but it was totally unexpected.
Philip Van Cleave is on with us from the Virginia Citizens Defense League, and you talk about the right to face your accuser, all of the things that were guaranteed in the Constitution. I can hear the, quote, fiscal conservatives saying, well, that would just be enormously expensive. Our courtrooms would be bogged down. When did not following the Constitution become a fiscal issue? And is this really an example of the fact that we spend our tax dollars on nonsense when we should be spending it on making sure there are enough judges and enough courts so that we can face our accusers when these things happen, when we get our full representation? Because it always makes me chuckle when somebody says we should have more courtrooms, and then somebody says, well, that would cost way too much money. At what price constitutional protections, right, Phil?
Right, and what is the government there for? I mean, the trouble is the government's doing all kinds of stuff it shouldn't be involved in, spending their money on all kinds of things it shouldn't be spending it on. What we expect it to spend it on is military to protect us, coordinating things, goods crossing state lines, having a common money, and providing courts and police. I mean, that's its fundamental job. If it doesn't have money for courts, then it's doing something wrong. That's what we expect it to do. And that's a poor excuse to say, well, we can't have due process because it would just be inordinately expensive. Well, excuse me, I would rather see 10 bad guys walk free than one innocent person go to jail. And I think that's how this country was founded on, that principle. That's why our court system is innocent until proven guilty. Because we will accept that sometimes the bad guy will get off, but in turn we prevent that one case of an innocent going to jail when he shouldn't be. And but when it comes to red flag, it's just the opposite. You're guilty. You're assumed guilty until you can go in and prove you're innocent, that you're not dangerous.
Well, Philip, they talk about when we see so much media coverage, and what role does my industry play in this? Because it seems like we're softening up the customer base to start accepting the idea that the Fourth Amendment makes them less safe, that the Second Amendment makes them less safe, that the First Amendment makes them less safe, and that we really, we're in a dangerous place where I understand my friends who don't want a constitutional convention of states because they're afraid that enough American citizens are starting to think that the one that we had in the first place is all wrong, and we need to have something where the government gives us things rather than protects our things from being taken away from us.
Yeah, we're the servant of the government instead of the government being our servant. We're like the owners of the mansion. We're about to hand the keys over to the janitor or the butler, and we're going to start working for him now. He's going to own the mansion. Why? Because we're frightened. We got to hide in the corner. Life is something you're to fear. You're not to stand proud and enjoy life as a free person. You're to cower and wait for your big buddy, the government, to protect you and provide for you and babysit you. It's a difference between one accepting that you want to be a baby or being an adult, a free adult. And right now, a lot of people are choosing to be a little baby, wanting to be coddled by. They're just not growing up. They're not getting past the toddler stage. They're remaining there. The people that are grown up want the government to be our servant. We're the one driving this train, and we can protect ourselves, by the way, if we have to. But it's just we got a whole bunch of people that are just immature. That are trying to drive the train, and that's scary because they want the government things. And we see how that works out. Take a look at Venezuela. That if you like Venezuela, go down there, visit for a while, and if that's what you like, then come back and talk to me about it.
Well, yeah, and certainly with the police fighting the army, and it's a whole horror story down there. Philip, with all these things coming up, July 9th begins the special session. What do the listeners need to be telling their legislators? Do you have some primer points online at vcdl.org? Or are there other events and things that they can interact with you about before then so that they're prepared to talk to their senators and delegates?
Well, we have a landing page for this. Just go to vcdl.org/rally. vcdl.org/rally, because we're also going to have a rally at the bell tower, but we're having a lobby day, and this will tell you about that. And it's got a place you can click to send a pre-written email to your legislators saying no more gun control, no more. And we'll be doing other things. So if you can, go up to our website also and get on VA Alert. That's our free email system. Get on that. And that way you'll know everything that's coming up during that session, and it'll make it really easy to to support the pro-gun bills that are going to be introduced, because there's going to be some good stuff we're working on as well. We're not going to let the antis drive everything with gun control. We're going to fire back the other way and say, no, we know how to save lives. Let's get rid of gun-free zones. So do that, and if you want to join, consider joining us. The more people we've got, the stronger we are. And you can do that online.
And when is the lobby day going to be during this special session, Philip, or do you have that hammered down yet?
We do. It's the first day, July 9th. Tuesday, July 9th at 9 a.m., we're meeting at the Bell Tower, which is at 9th Street and Bank Street in Richmond, right at the General Assembly. Right there's the Bell Tower on the Capitol property, right on 9th Street, right at that 9th and Bank. And we're going to rally there and head on, or meet there and basically head in, do some lobbying in teams. If you've never lobbied, don't worry about you doing it as a team. And so, the ropes are easy. You go around and do that, then we'll have a rally. It looks like it'll be between noon and 1. And then we're going to encourage people to go to some committee meetings and stuff, because this whole session is about guns. You won't be there to worry about anything else, just protecting your gun rights and the rights and the future of your children and eventually their children.
Well, I find it ironic that this happens hard on the heels of Independence Day and in our 400th anniversary here in Virginia, where 400 years ago we threw off the collectivist model before we all starved to death and actually started a form of representative government in Jamestown. And 5 days after we celebrate our independence, which we were able to win because we didn't have confiscations and we didn't have red flag laws back then.
I like how you think, Joe. I like how you think. That'll be a point I think I'll steal from you.
Okay.
When we're just past July 4th, a time when the British tried to disarm us. They tried to take away our guns, and that ended up in a revolution. And here we are again with people trying to take away our guns just a few days after we celebrate what happened the last time they tried that.
Well, Philip, thank you so much again. I appreciate your visit, as always, vcdl.org, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And, of course, up next, Andy McCarthy from the National Review Online on Freedom and Prosperity Radio next.